Hi everyone, so today I wanted to record the unboxing of my new Arteza Gouache paints. Arteza, I've heard it both ways. So this is a set of 24, and to be honest I expected the box to be bigger. I don't know why, but and this is what we have. Now what I liked about Arteza as I was researching this is that their paints, they say that their paints are light fast, which is what I was looking for. I didn't know if gouache had a light fast rating by itself on it, or as a type of paint. I've only used so far acrylic and watercolors and oils, so I wasn't sure if gouache as a type of paint would have light fastness, but they do. On the box, on the back of the box, you have all the colors that are included in the pack, and you have the pluses, and almost all of them have the 3 pluses except for peach red, which has 2 pluses, but that's fine. So the pluses mean light fast, 3 pluses is excellent, 2 is good, or something along those lines. So in light fast, what that means is that the painting will survive many years. I don't know how many years, tens and tens and tens of years, decades. Is looking at how the paint reacts when it's exposed to light and just being around. So you want all your paints to have a very good light fast rating, so that you know that your painting will last for a very long time. You have these guys, the little squares here that are looking at transparency, so they tell you how transparent or not the paint is. A full white square like this means it is opaque. A full black square like this means that it is transparent, and somewhere in the middle. Alright, if that makes sense. So let's see what we can do with these guys. I want to try them out. I'm going to use a sketchbook that I'm using as a journal of sorts. I'm either going to use the Montmartre sketchbook. The Montmartre sketchbook I got at Winner's Home Sense. This is the line that they keep there for art, and the sketchbook, just a regular sketchbook, but it's very thick. The pages are very thick, so I was able to use them with watercolors and acrylic. So they do well. It is absorbent, so you can use a few layers of watercolor on there, water, and it doesn't go through. And I believe the one that I use the most, I think this guy I use the most water on, and it wrinkles a little bit. The page wrinkles a little bit. They're not meant for watercolor paper. This is not a watercolor paper, but I find that it does very well with watercolor, and it does warp a little bit, but to me it's okay. I don't have an issue with it. So I could use this with the gouache, or I could use, I just got 2 brand new sketchbooks from Michael's when they had a sale, and they are more regular sketchbooks. This paper is much thinner and wider than the other one. I remember when I went to buy them, I was looking, it's a little too white for my taste, but they were on sale. You can't let a sale go. When you're looking at art supplies, you take advantage of every single sale. So I got them. And then I got two, because you had to take two to take advantage of the sale. But I'm gonna try, I'm probably going to try the gouache on both to see which look I like better. The type of paper that you have always has a different effect on the overall painting. Why? Because of the different texture of the paper, its ability to absorb and not absorb, or wrinkle or not wrinkle, that kind of thing. So your paintings are going to look different. With something like canvas board, an actual stretch canvas, they always have the same kind of quality because it's always the same, right? You get cotton canvas that you use gesso on, and then you paint, and then it depends on the kind of paint that you use, and you're going to get different textures to it. And then if you use some textured mediums, that's different. But with paper, I've used old books that I turned into journals, where I would gesso the pages, and that has a different texture, right? I've used it with acrylic paints and oil paints, and they have a different texture versus paper like this that's thicker. So for my acrylic, this one was acrylic, this one versus the used books that I would use, it's a different texture, definitely. So what I found, for example, for this, so I'm talking about this guy instead of the Arteza. But just to finish my thought here, the paper absorbed a lot more of the paint, so I had to use more of the paint, more water in the paint in order to finish my painting. Whereas with an old book that I gessoed the pages, I don't have to use as much because it glides, the paint glides a bit more. Anyways, I can do a review of that at a later date if you guys are interested. But let's see what I can paint now. Alright, so the battery on the camera died out completely while I was in the middle of talking, but you guys didn't miss much. I only just added some highlights. I kept adding white to my blue mixture. Oh, it came right off. That's funny. Anyways, so yes, I added a lot of white to my blue mixture to get all my all the highlights, and then I went in with dark again with this Prussian blue. This Prussian blue right here, to put in some of the darker highlights. Shadows, to highlight the highlights, if that makes sense. When you put a lighter color next to a very dark color, it just the darker color just makes it the other lighter color just pop more, and vice versa. So I always, whenever I put in highlights, I always go back into the shadows to retouch them. The contrast is really, really important, and I personally like a lot of contrast, so I try to maximize that as much as possible. The clouds were already done as much as I wanted them to be done, so I left it as is. This is the final painting. Alright, as far as the paints themselves go, the gouache, I find that at this stage, at least, I mean, I know what paints I'm using, right, but they are not discernible from acrylic, the way that they look like on this paper at least. This is gouache and this is acrylic. So in terms of the way that the paper takes the paint or the moisture or whichever, they more or less work the same, I find. Definitely a difference between the gouache and the acrylic that I found is when you do add the water in, the paint becomes that much more what's a good word to use here? Smooth, rich. I hope I can explain it that way. Something that acrylic doesn't do. When you add a water to acrylic, you thin it down. And there is that quality where if you add too much water, you end up undermining the paint, and it sort of falls apart. You don't get that with gouache. It just becomes that much more silky and flowy. Silky is a good word, which I liked. This stuff at the bottom here, in terms of the water, let's see if I can bring you in closer. I dry brushed it, almost pure paint on my brush, in that mixture of the blue, the ultramarine. Did I use? Yeah, the ultramarine, blue, and white. And I had added just very, very little water, if anything at all. So I dry brushed it, and it gave the appearance of choppy water like this, which I like the look of. And also as a reminder, just when you do this, you tend to pick up the texture of the paper or the canvas that you're using, and this is the kind of texture you'd get on this kind of paper. Now, bearing in mind that I already had some color underneath, so it's not directly on the paper, but this is the kind of texture you'd get. So what else can I say about gouache? I very much used it as I would acrylics, in the sense of how I am building up the layers. It goes down very beautifully. It does not, I didn't find that it activated the layers underneath much because I didn't use much water. So on my first layers is when I use the most water. And then as I was building up those layers and I kept having layers on top and more paint on top, I went less and less water and more paint, to the point where you do the brush or the dry brushing like this, and then you leave it like this. You don't go back to it to add another layer. This is the top layer. So in that sense, I use the gouache as acrylic, and I didn't have any issues with it, not at all. Where there are thinner layers on top of thinner layers, I found that the paint was more transparent, which makes sense because I have more water. But other than that, that was the only difference, or the way that I noticed in using them for the first time. Now I would like to use my other sketchbook to see how the other paper takes the paint, how it responds to gouache. I think it should be fine. If you notice, there's a bit of a lift to this paper, and this is what this particular sketchbook does. I don't mind it because it stays in the sketchbook, and you close it up and it looks like this. So it does lift a little bit the paper. It does because it absorbs all that water, but I did not use as much water as I did, for example, for this watercolor painting. But yes. Oh, another thing that I wanted to mention is that these particular paints have nice vibrant colors. At least the blues here are very, very bright. I shouldn't say bright, just powerful colors. There's a lot of pigment in them. I really enjoyed painting with the blues. I find this color here, the light apricot, the little peachy color that I have in the clouds, I absolutely love this color. I'm gonna end up using it wherever I can. I absolutely love it. It's a very, very delicate, is delicate a good word to use for it? I think so. Elegant. Delicate, elegant color. And it goes very well with the blues. I really enjoy that contrast, or the way that the paint or the colors work together. So that's that one. So this is my other sketchbook that I got from Michael's. I got it from Michael's, and I looked up another reference to use, another water reference. the two paintings side by side, I wanted to do a comparison. So this is one of them. This is the first one that I've done with the wave, and this is my second one here. I definitely think, and this is part of, I think, just my overall mood today, because I'm doing these in 2 different days. I did try to do the paintings in all in one sitting, but I was getting tired by the end of the first painting, so I just decided to let it go. There is a difference in style and overall look. I definitely much more like this one here in my other sketchbook, but it can also be an effect of the paper itself, the way that it takes the paint. This one has more of a tooth, this paper has more of a tooth to it, so I think that is also showing in how the paint comes across, in how the finished piece looks. Also, as I was saying earlier, there is a bit of an effect of just my overall mood and my ability to just slow down enough for all the details and whatnot. I may have been a bit more rushed today just because maybe I'm not quite in the mood for painting. But there's that difference there as well. And as you can see, there's barely any lift to this paper, which is heavier, in this sketchbook from Montmartre. But there's quite a bit of buckling in this other sketchbook here. You can definitely tell from the back of the paper how buckled it is. Now, that's not to say that it can't be a thing. I mean, even with watercolors, if I like, sometimes I like the crinkliness of it, the sound of it that it makes when it's dried after it's been wet, and it has a texture when I go over it with my hands. So sometimes I do really like that. So I definitely would like to explore a bit more. At the moment, I'm not enjoying it. It really depends on mood. But at the moment, I'm really not that happy with this paper, with this sketchbook from Michaels, in terms of its ability to cover or to take water-based paint. It's not, by the way, guys, it's not marketed as a watercolor sketchbook or anything like that. It's a regular sketchbook. It's meant for dry media, not wet media. But I just wanted to see how it's reacting to water-based paints like the gouache. Because as I said, this guy is also, the sketching journal here from Montmartre is also, I'm not sure if it said if it would be from, or if it would take water media, but the paper is much different. It's a lot thicker and has more tooth to it. So something like this that may not be necessarily marketed as watercolor sketchbook can still take watercolor quite well. Something like this though, with much thinner paper, it does this sort of buckling here that we have talked about. And so it really depends on whether you like this kind of effect or not. As I said, right now I'm not the greatest fan of it in the moment, at the moment, but that's sort of the difference between the two sketchbooks here. So yeah, I guess I'm gonna leave it at that, and I hope you guys enjoyed your time. Thank you so much for joining me tonight, and I'll see you next time. Bye.